Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1230 of the Juicebox Podcast. Well, I think today some of you are going to be mad at this episode. You might even get a little pissed off, and some of you are going to be amazed, and some of you are going to think, this is a miracle. It's probably not. One way or the other, please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Guys, seriously, wait till you hear Jim's story. It's bananas. And I'm talking like B-A-N-A-N-A-S. That is bananas. If you're living with diabetes or are the caregiver of someone who is, and you're looking for an online community of supportive people who understand, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. And if you'd like to help with T1D research, go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox, complete the survey, and just like that, you'll be helping. They're looking for U.S. residents who have type 1 or are the caregiver of someone who does. I got the opening done so quickly, I ran out of things to say. So I'll just wait with you quietly till the music ends. Dun, 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 dun. Bum, 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 bum. Here it comes. Nice. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod and the Omnipod 5. Learn more and get started today at omnipod.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by AG1. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. When you use my link and place your first order, you're going to get a welcome kit, a year's supply of vitamin D, and 5 free travel packs. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 30% off of the clothing, towels, sheets, off of everything they have at CozyEarth.com.
So hi, I'm Jim B. from Boston, Mass. I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Jim, I appreciate you doing this. You don't know this because you're completely new to the podcast and everything, but you're probably the quickest person to ever book and get on that I've ever talked with. Usually it takes 6 months to get onto the podcast.
Wow, well, I feel like an Olympic champion and I'm just sitting here at my desk.
Well, you should, because you have a very specific story that is, I think, significant. I'll tell people that you appeared as a new Facebook group member and put up this kind of like not long, but detailed, thoughtful post about your situation. And it became instantly the most popular, almost polarizing post that I've seen in a while. I want to work backwards and get back to that post at some point. So before we get to that, tell me, how old are you? How old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1? I want to hear that bit first.
Sure. So first of all, Scott, thank you for having me. I'm glad I was able to bring a topic to the table that people seem to be excited about. So I'm happy to share my story. And so I am about to turn 58 in 2 weeks. And I was diagnosed as a type 1 when I was 50 years old on Valentine's Day of 2020. Diabetes doesn't run in my family at all. There's no history of it. I wasn't pre-diabetic. This literally came out of thin air for me. And I live a relatively healthy lifestyle. I was not a huge snacker, not a regular Coke drinker. It just literally hit me like a bag of sand to the side of the head out of nowhere.
Jim, tell me, Jim's okay, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. 2020, or did you get the date wrong just then?
It was 8 years ago. And so it was 2016. I'm sorry. My bad math.
No, that's fine. Because I'm like, I had it in my head. I'm like, he's had type 1 for 8 years. Then you said 2020. I'm like, oh, did I misunderstand?
No, sorry.
Okay, don't be sorry. So
dates happen to people at my age.
Listen, I'm 52 and I'm not doing the like walk into the room and forget that I came to pee thing yet, but I'm getting closer. So you said it came out of nowhere. So let's go through it first.
Sure.
In your family, any other type 1 diabetes?
Nobody who is a close relative. I have some second cousins, but their diabetes runs in the other side of the family. So you could really argue that there was no biological connection to anybody in my family who had it. I'll explain to you sort of how I was diagnosed. My wife and I were away on vacation, and I've always been somebody, I ran cross country in high school. My legs have always had a lot of muscle on them. And I opened up the window curtains one morning and my wife said, "Oh my gosh, your legs are so skinny. What's happened?" And I burst into tears and said, "I don't know what's wrong, but I can't stop drinking water. I'm thirsty all the time. I feel like I have sand in my mouth. I'm sure there's something wrong. And I hope this vacation isn't our last hurrah, but I'm not really sure what's happening." And my wife, who is my non-clinical medical advisor, said to me, "Well, let's call your doctor right now." And we called and we set up an appointment for when we got home. And we got home on a Monday. Tuesday morning, I was in my doctor's office at 8:30. And by 9:15 that morning, I was diagnosed with diabetes. They believed it was going to be type 1 at the time because my A1C was 13.7. I had some other factors. And so they ran a panel of tests. And lo and behold, I already had the type 1 antibodies present, so they could confirm that, in fact, I was a type 1. And starting that afternoon, I was learning how to prick my finger and use a glucose monitor and starting both short-term and long-term insulin. And it just turned my whole life upside down on that Valentine's Day.
Jim, were you also in the drama club in high school? Because you almost made me cry. Did you go off on that vacation thinking I'm dying? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Omnipod 5. A lot of people in my private Facebook group talk about their love for Omnipod 5. Have you seen those posts and thought, oh, I wish I could have that experience with an insulin pump too? If you have, and you answered yes to that question, it's possible you're experiencing something called FOMO, fear of missing out on Omnipod. You've heard of the FOMO. Now we're looking at FOMO. Symptoms of FOMO, of course: wishing you could wear an outfit without pockets, or dreaming about walking past a doorknob without getting tubing caught on everything. You know, like, oh, yanks the sight right out. You've heard the stories. You might be fantasizing about jumping into a swimming pool on a nice warm day in a nice cool pool without having to disconnect from your insulin pump first. Think of all the insulin pumps that exist. There's one that you can dump into the pool with. You know which one it is? It's Omnipod 5. So the good news here is you don't have to suffer from FOMO any longer. Find out what you're missing and try Omnipod 5 for yourself. Just visit omnipod.com/juicebox and give away your FOMO. I get up every day and I make myself a glass of AG1. Happens every day without fail. Why do I do this? Well, there's a number of reasons, but how about this? 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. AG1 supports healthy aging, and I'm getting older. It can also help combat visible signs of aging, of which I have a number. I've recommended AG1 to my family, my friends, and today to you. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. Feel the boost of energy, that sustained energy that comes with AG1 without needing as much coffee. How would you like to feel energized? How would you like your hair to be clear and bright and skin bright? Because listen to what I'm saying here. AG1 supports healthy, clear, bright skin. It promotes healthy hair and nails. Clear and brighter skin, hair, and nails. What else do you want? Oh, perhaps you'd like an improved boost of focus, supporting something called mental clarity. Well, it does those things. Stress and focus and concentration. You need something on your side. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on in your life. Just drink this AG1 and I'll tell you what. I want anything that promotes a relaxed feeling of calm. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. Give it a try. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're thinking. Green drinks, probably taste like mud. It doesn't. It's kind of lovely. Just goes down nice and easy. And Scotty don't like stuff that Scotty don't like. You know what I mean? Here's what I'm telling you. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Use my link. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free travel packs with your very first purchase at drinkag1.com/juicebox. Of course, that's drinkag1.com/juicebox. And I'm going to finish up this ad break because you're going to want to settle into Jim's story nice and comfy, and I don't want you to have to break again later. Let me tell you real quickly about Cozy Earth. CozyEarth.com. Super comfies, comfy shorts, comfy sweatshirts, comfy sheets, comfy towels. Oh my goodness gracious. Everything I have from CozyEarth.com feels good when I rub it on myself. You want to save 30% off of all that stuff? You're in luck because Scott has an offer code. It's called What in the motherfuck is this? You hear this? Do you hear this? You do, don't you? Oh, there's a cricket loose in my room. But I will push on. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code Juicebox. Save 30% off of everything you put in your cart. I'm talking about the waffle towels. I'm talking about the sheets. I love my sheets. Here's my whole life. I get up out of my sheets bed. Hear that cricket? Wait, shut up. Shut up. It won't shut up. I have to throw something. Hold on. I missed it. Jeez. Guys, if I go crazy right now, you'll know what happened. But I'm just going to press on. Let me tell you this. I'm going to need my Cozy Earth towel soon because I'm going to need a nice, warm, relaxing shower to get past this noise, get this buzzing out of my head. And then when I get out, I'm going to pat myself dry with a Cozy Earth waffle towel, and it's a good thing. And when I get out of that bathroom, dry like the day I was born, beautiful powdered butt dry, I'm going to slip into some Cozy Earth pajamas and then get into my Cozy Earth sheets. And I own all those things, but I paid 30% less for them because I used the offer code Juicebox at checkout. That's all I need you to do. Go use that offer code. Shut up! It won't stop.
I actually did. I truly, in my heart, thought there's something terrible going on, and this will be the last wonderful vacation I have with my beautiful wife before, the shit hits the fan and whatever we're about to have to deal with, we're going to have to deal with together. And although I don't keep really secrets from my wife, I felt like this was so potentially devastating that it was important for the two of us to have a nice romantic 3-day weekend in Miami.
How long had you been hiding your symptoms?
Probably about 3 weeks to a month is what I can recall. Now, there is, Scott, a story that I'll share with you briefly that happened about 8 months before that, which is I was running a conference in Chicago and I got the flu the day before the conference started. And I was very, very, very sick with the flu, like I had never been sick before. But I didn't realize because I was alone in my hotel room that I was getting very dehydrated and how sick I really was. And so after 4 days of being stuck in a hotel room, I was talking on the phone with my wife, who was in Boston, and said, either I'm flying to Chicago or you need to go to the ER and figure out what's going on. And so I took an ambulance to the ER and they checked me and they told me that I was extremely dehydrated and that, in fact, some of my core body functions were either on the verge or about to start shutting down because I was so dehydrated. So that experience was, in my mind at the time, totally unrelated to my diagnosis. My endocrinologist has a theory, and it's only a theory, of course, but that I was so dehydrated that my body started to become compromised. And your pancreas, apparently, and your beta cells in particular, are very susceptible to sort of stop working from dehydration, and they don't always come back to life the full way. I never like to say that's what gave me diabetes because we don't really know.
Sure.
But they thought that maybe I had a predisposition to it, and then this may have been the trigger for it.
Yeah. Did you have, once the testing happened, did you have autoantibodies for type 1?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And are there any other autoimmune issues with you or in your close family, like celiac, hypothyroidism, vitiligo, anything like that?
No, nothing like that. The only thing that I carry is I'm a cystic fibrosis carrier. That's the only sort of interesting medical piece about me. Otherwise, I am as plain Jim as you can get. I'm absolutely just, normal, average, run-of-the-mill kind of person.
Your mom have arthritis, RA?
No, she did not.
How about that? Okay. You get the flu.
Excuse me, I said she did not. She does not. She's still with us.
Jim didn't want to write his mom off too soon. No, she's gone. No, wait, you know what? She's not. When's the last time you saw your mom, Jim? Jeez. How old is she?
My mother is a very spry 84-year-old.
Good for her. That's excellent. Okay, so you go to the hospital. They pump you full of fluids. Is that enough to get you on your feet then?
That it was. So I spent about 12 hours getting pumped full of fluids. They sent me back to the hotel. And then 2 days later, I was finally well enough to fly home and spent another probably 5 days of recovery at home, getting stronger and sort of rehydrating, getting my energy back. But when I felt better, I thought it was a one and done. I never thought it would potentially have any long-term impact. And that's why I say, we can't absolutely say, yes, this caused that. It's a belief that I have in my life that I was apparently so sick that it could have potentially triggered this.
Yeah. Well, you've never been around autoimmune or type 1 either. But, my daughter had Coxsackie virus before she was diagnosed. Having a virus, for instance, before a diagnosis with type 1 is incredibly common. Sometimes even stress. I've talked to people who have gone through like traumatic things, then their type 1s come on. But, in the end, like you alluded to, you had autoimmune antibodies. They just hadn't been triggered to cause your type 1 yet. Then after that, you have type 1 diabetes. There's a reason I'm skipping through all this. You have type 1 diabetes. How are you managing then? Like, what do they give you to deal with this?
Sure. So I immediately, on the day that I was diagnosed, started taking both short-term or mealtime insulin and long-time insulin. Mm-hmm. So I was taking 3 shots a day with my meals, or about half an hour before I would eat a meal. And they put me on a straight flatline dose. So I was starting with 4 units of mealtime insulin. And then I started with 6 units of long-term insulin, or what I would take it right before bed at night or sometime early in the evening. As well as I also started metformin at the time.
Okay. And they told you had type 1 diabetes. Nobody misdiagnosed you as type 2 or anything like that?
At the very beginning, like for the first maybe 10 minutes that I was talking to the doctor on that fateful day, he said, maybe it's type 2, but based on your A1C, which at the time was 13.7 when I had some blood drawn in the office that day, you're presenting as a type 1, but let's do the lab work. And so it took a few days, obviously, to get the antibody test back and a few other things. But within a very short term, we knew I was a type 1.
Yeah, lab work confirmed it. Okay. So now you live how many years with type 1 diabetes before you intersected GLP medication?
It was about 6.5 years.
Okay.
So I started Mounjaro in October of 2022.
Why was it given to you, or why did you ask for it?
So I didn't ask for it. It was nowhere on my radar screen. But I'm lucky enough to live in Greater Boston, where we have some of the strongest and best medical facilities in the country. And my endocrinologist, who I see quarterly, I would say is appropriately aggressive with both technology and medicine. Mm-hmm. And she said, there's this new medicine that's come out. It's really designed for type 2. She said, but we're seeing some success with type 1s. And if you're open to trying it for probably 2 or 3 months to see what it could potentially do for you, I think you might be a good candidate for it.
Okay.
And because I trust my endocrinologist implicitly, till the end of the day, I'll listen to anything that she tells me to do, follow her guidance. I said, sure, I'm happy to try it. And so that's what triggered the initial 2.5 Mounjaro shot.
Okay. Now, let me just go backwards for a second, because I really want to hammer this home before we move forward. Every day, 6.5 years, basal insulin covered every carb that you ate. If you didn't, your blood sugar went up, the whole thing, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I would even sometimes think, let's say I was going to have a heavy carb meal. So maybe I would take 6 or 8 units of insulin before a meal. And then I would have, what would surprise me to be less than carb, or someone would serve me whole wheat when I wasn't expecting. And so I sometimes, would go down based on my insulin into the 50s, and even once down as low as the high 40s, which was very scary. But yes, I was absolutely taking my insulin as I should, my metformin as I should, every meal, looking, because they had me on, because I was in what we thought was, or what could be described as my honeymoon period. I didn't have to go through the whole calculation of how many carbs am I going to be eating and how many does my body need for that yet. It was still kind of a flat line, helpful dosage.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you ever experienced what people call a honeymoon?
Yes, yeah. I do. And in fact, I think that I was in my honeymoon period for at least a good 4 to 4.5 years before I started to need more insulin, both at mealtime and at night for the long term.
Okay. So you probably had, I don't want to call it Lada Light, but you were using a fair amount of insulin already, but it went up about 4.5 years into it. Then you lived a couple of more years like that with the increased need. Then the Mounjaro came on.
Exactly.
Okay. Did you have any weight issues at the time?
As a youth, I was always skinny. As a college kid, I enjoyed donuts and ice cream and cheeseburgers. When I hit my late 20s, I would say I started to put on weight, but I'm 5'11", with medium sort of build, so I should be around 180. And I got up to when I was taking the insulin before I started the Mounjaro, my weight went up almost to 220 pounds. And some of that was because I could eat more with the more insulin. And I was trying to live what I quote unquote normally would eat. And so I was probably not quite as self-aware of where my weight was going as it should have been. However, I also think that the insulin helped me gain weight.
Did you get caught up in that that feeling of, wow, I learned how to bolus for all this. I can eat whatever I want, and then forget about food as nutrition and calories?
It's as if you just read my mind. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's pretty common, Jim. So this podcast, which I know you don't listen to, talks, when we talk about management stuff, we talk about using the right amount of insulin at the right time and keeping your A1Cs and your variability low by understanding the timing and amount of insulin. But at some point, there are people who you start seeing food so much as this like thing you conquer with insulin that you stop seeing it the way other people think about it, which is calories that could, if I eat too many of them, cause me to gain weight.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it happens. So, okay, so you are a couple of years hot and heavy using insulin, you're gaining weight, et cetera, and so on. Your life's moving on. Doctor comes over and says, hey, we're hearing about how this drug is helping people. Why don't you give it a whirl? They don't have any problems with insurance because back then insurance wasn't hassling people about it. Isn't it interesting? And I want to point this out, Jim. I don't want to make your episode a political statement, but if Jim would have had this experience 2 years later, then the rest of the story you're about to hear never happens, because Jim's doctor would have said, hey, I want you to try 2.5 of a GLP. And his insurance would have said, no, he has type 1 diabetes and that's not what this is for. So you get the 2.5, you start to inject it. What do you notice in the first week?
Like probably many of the listeners, not only did I start the injection, but I found a Facebook group. I did some research online, and I thought I was going to take the shot and sort of wake up the next morning and not be hungry and maybe be down 5 pounds. Like I had no expectations of what to expect,
right,
other than what I was reading about. So I started the shot on a Friday because I did read that people said that the side effects seemed to be worse in the first 24 to 48 hours after taking a shot. And so I thought, well, that will give me the weekend to sort of figure out how I'm feeling and what's going on. And I took the first shot with both a level of excitement, that thinking, wow, I wonder what this is going to do for me. And could this change my trajectory of how I have to be as a diabetic? But I was also nervous. And I would say the first week it had zero impact on me. Zero. I ate the same. I felt the same. My body processed food the same. My glucose numbers were the same. I didn't see anything. And I thought, okay, well, 1 week in, we'll see, maybe the second week something will happen. And so the next Friday, again, I took a 2.5 milligram shot, and probably within about 12 hours, I started to feel this slight sense of nausea. And I am not somebody that I don't get seasick. I don't get motion sick. I don't generally get nauseous. And I thought, oh, this is kind of an interesting feeling in my stomach. I wonder if I maybe ate too much. And now the medicine is telling me, hey, slow down. Your digestive tract is slowing down. And so your stomach is giving you a signal. And within another 24 hours, I had lost interest mentally in most foods. And the best way that I describe it when I talk to my friends and colleagues about it is it went from like always being hungry and always thinking about what's my next meal? What am I going to have for a snack? What am I going to drink? What am I doing? To the flip switch went off and food just evaporated from my stream of consciousness as always being that number one topic in my brain. And instead, it flipped to everything else that was going on me. I felt like it was as if I had foggy glasses on. And then one day I used a little lens cleaner and everything became sharp and crisp because the noise from the food and thinking about what my next meal would be, what would my snack be, just went away. And everything else came clearer into picture in my life. It was just unbelievable.
How did you find the experience? Because Jim, you don't know this, but I don't have diabetes. But I began using GLP April last year. So I've been May, June. I've been on it like 14 months now. I've lost 47 pounds. I would go as far as to say that there was some time where I had to reevaluate how I spent my days because I was suddenly met with extra time in my mind and extra time physically because I wasn't constantly with food. Does that make sense? Like I actually woke up one day and I'm like, it almost felt like boredom or loneliness because there was more than 24 hours in the day for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Scott. And the way that I frequently have described it is I felt like I got more bandwidth in my day, that it was as if a piece of the pie of what used to fill up my week or my day was removed. And now I could start to focus on other things and do them in a deeper, more meaningful way.
I'm able to better do that thing that fit people always tell other people all the time. They're like, food's just, fuel for your body. And you're like, okay, like that sounds good. And then I look at them and they're all jacked up and they've got abs and stuff. And I go, obviously it's working for you. So I'll try. And then I try to think of food as fuel. And I'm like, that's nice, but I would like a cookie. Now it's not like that. Now, like when you and I get done recording today, I'm going to go downstairs, take a piece of steak, probably 2 ounces. I'm going to slice it thin, throw it in a pan with 2 eggs, scramble it together and eat it for protein. And I don't know, I might put something else with it. I'm not sure exactly what, but I'm going to eat it because I know I have to for nutrition. But it's 10:30 in the morning right now, and I am not hungry. I haven't eaten anything today. I got up with my dogs. I did the thing. I got a shower. It's freeing in a way that I think some people would hear that and go, my God, that sounds horrible. And I think if you were to fight it when it happened, it probably would be horrible. If you started lamenting the loss of something, I can see where you could get into like a psychological battle with it. But I just gave myself over to it because I was like, I'm healthier than I was yesterday. I want to keep doing this, Interesting to hear other people talk about it like that. So
yeah, Scott, I'll tell you another interesting nuance for me, which is I used to find cooking very relaxing. So it would not be uncommon for me to cook maybe 4 out of 7 dinners for my family or for my wife. Our kids are older and moved out. But for my wife and I to sit down and have a relatively nice meal that would be somewhat complicated to make, but I enjoyed that process. To me, that cooking was a relaxing process. I would turn on music and I would enjoy the whole piece of it. And one of the things that really changed for me is that even the preparation of food lost interest to me. And so really anything related to food and nutrition just sort of moved to the back of my mind because it was no longer the joyful experience of eating or the joyful experience of cooking.
Yeah.
And the other piece I would say to your steak and eggs breakfast, by the way, if we were lived closer, I'd be there for your leftovers because it sounds delicious, is that I realized that I can't eat salad anymore. I used to enjoy salad quite a bit, but now it doesn't have enough nutritional value in it for me to eat, even when I add some protein, because I do still need carbs, of course. Like we all need carbs to survive. And so, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving you medical advice, but to me, I feel like I need carbs to survive. For me, I've had to really think about what is the nutritional value of everything that goes in my mouth. So before it used to be how sweet is it? And how salty is it? Because those are the 2 flavor profiles that I would sort of lean towards. And now it's all about how much is it going to feed what I need to keep my engine going.
Right. I have those same thoughts. It's really, it actually put me where those health nuts wanted me to be when they were saying it to me, and everybody else. Food is fuel, and only so much fits in here. So put in good fuel.
Exactly.
And no, it's fantastic. Okay. So, but this isn't even why you're on the podcast, although we'll jump ahead and jump back again. How many years have you been on Mounjaro?
It'll be 2 years in October 1st of 2024. So I'm about 18 months or so into it now.
How much weight have you lost?
I've lost almost 60 pounds.
Wow, good for you. 60 pounds.
Thank
That's
you.
Insane.
It's a life-changing amount of weight.
Yeah. Somebody in my family started using it and they went the other way. They started lamenting, I don't like food doesn't bring me joy. And I'm like, it's funny. It's like, I don't think food shouldn't bring you joy, but we've gotten to a weird place now where the food's so supercharged with salt and sugar and all that other stuff. And, they probably bringing you more joy than it's supposed to. They're having that thing. And I said, I'm going to say something I think they used to say in the 70s around like the dieting phase. And I don't want to trigger anybody, but nothing tastes as good as skinny feels is how I think about things now. I'm like, because the visual's nice. Like looking better is nice. Putting on a t-shirt that doesn't grab me is nice. Not, having fat like in places that I shouldn't. That's all nice. Like, don't get me wrong. But it's the knees don't hurt, more energy, better sleep, feel healthier, skin looks better. Like it's the other stuff that I'm happy to have. The visage part is a bonus. I wonder how you feel.
I love that I feel generally more like I have more energy. I will say, however, sometimes I struggle to eat enough calories to keep my energy level up.
Okay.
So that's the one thing for me. I absolutely agree with you. Like the whole idea that I'm healthier, I'm lighter, my clothes aren't tight on me, all feels good to me. The thing that feels best to me though is when I look at my blood work numbers and know that not only do I physically look better, but I'm healthier now than I was before. And that's going to lead to hopefully a long life of being a parent, maybe God willing, someday a grandparent. And the life that it is giving me to and the ability to look long term forward as opposed to short term forward has been a game changer. Because if you are diagnosed with diabetes and you're in your 50s or 50 like I was, you tend to read about the bad stuff because people don't tend to talk about or write articles about, oh, I have diabetes and look at these wonderful things that are happening to me. So I read all of the negatives and was preparing for those. And now I feel like this medicine has given me a new outlook on life. The last time my A1C, I don't think I mentioned this before, but my last A1C check was 5.7. Right? It doesn't get much better than that for a type 1 diabetic. I couldn't hope for more than that.
Yeah. How were they throughout those 6.5 years? Did they vacillate? Were they pretty stable, the A1Cs?
I generally was somewhere in the sixes for most of the time.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Here's the real reason you're on the podcast. You start doing the 2.5. Did you stay at 2.5 or did you ever go to 5 milligrams?
So I did 2.5 for a month. And then I moved up to 5, and then I kept going up, and I've gone up to as high as 15, and now I've gone back down. So we can talk about that too.
What number did you get your most weight loss at?
A combination of 10.0 and 12.5.
Okay, because I'm on 10 right now. I use Zepbound, so same drug. And I know the name's different, but same drug. My doctor's like, I think we're going to try the 12 next. And she keeps saying, like, you really see it 10, 12, even up to the highest dose. And said the same thing, like once we get the fat off of you, we'll go back and find a maintenance level. So how high did you made it all the way to 15?
So I went all the way to 15. I will say that I was only on 15 for a month, and I had significant side effects, much worse than I had on any of the other doses.
Okay.
And so we decided to go back down to the 12.5. And so I was on 12.5 for probably about 10 months straight. And I also feel very lucky, although I know a lot of people have trouble finding the medicine. Locally, I was able, within a 30-minute drive of my house, I was never out of the medicine at any time. I did have to drive half an hour to get it. To me, that half an hour of my life, I was well worth some time spent to pick up the medicine. So I did do 12, and now I'm back. So I stayed on 12 for a long time. And then I started having some additional lows. And so my blood glucose was going down to 60 sometimes at night. Mm-hmm. And so we thought I should go down. So I've been back on 10.0 for the last just 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so we think that maybe 10 is going to be my maintenance dose, but we're not sure yet. We have to wait and see.
You would have laughed extra hard more than other people on Friday afternoon if you were at my house when you saw me come out of here after working all day. And I looked at my wife and I was like, I got to go. I got to get my medicine. And then I drove like 45 minutes in traffic to this little pharmacy that I know carries it all the time. Go in, pleasantries, get it taken care of. Look at the guy, go, I will be back in a month. Remember me. Like you're actually working out a little system with them where you're like, look, you can trust me. I'm going to buy a box of this every month. And therefore they kind of hold it for you. There's like a whole back end thing that's going on around this. It's not, I'm not doing anything wrong. I've literally had to build a rapport with a pharmacist to make sure that my medication's there and covered by my insurance. Lovely. Like, and again, to say you feel lucky is crazy. I paid $25 for it. But here's the big part of your story though. How much insulin are you using? So
I am very proud and happy to say that I am off all insulin, 0 insulin. Let me say that again. No long-term, no short-term. I now take 0 insulin on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, and basically annual basis. And that happened after about 6 weeks of being on the Mounjaro. I started to titrate down and I'm sorry. It started after 2 weeks. I started to titrate down. And by about 5 or 6 weeks, I was fully off of all of my insulin.
So did your brain explode? Like you're halfway into a 5 milligram shot and I'm assuming you're on the phone with your endo going, I mean, we've been moving my insulin down the way I expected, but how much further down could this go?
Well, it was a great question. And when I first called and spoke to my endocrinologist and said, I don't think I need this much insulin and this is what's going on, she said, okay, maybe you'll have to go back up, but let's start to move you down. And so we moved down 2 units at a time of both the long acting and the mealtime insulin. And because I was on relatively low doses, it happened pretty quickly. And so I was able to get off of all of my insulin. And I have to say that when I meet diabetics, quote unquote, out in the wild, and if I see somebody with a Dexcom on, I'm just one of those people. I just go and start talking to them. Mm-hmm. And it happened on Saturday night. I was out, or Friday night, we were out for dinner at a Mexican restaurant, and I saw somebody wearing a G6 and went over and said, "What did you eat for dinner tonight? I'm just curious." And then we started talking, and she asked how much insulin I take, and I told her my story briefly. And the look on this woman's face was, I have to call my endocrinologist. And if it wasn't a Friday night at 9:00, I'd probably call her right now, because it is so unbelievable that I have proven through antibody testing that I'm a type 1, and yet I do not currently take any insulin.
Yeah. Here, I don't know how many people you know with type 1 diabetes, but have you been met with like skepticism when you say this? Do people say things like, you don't have type 1, you had type 2, like that kind of stuff?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time I hear that. And what I say is, first of all, you don't know me, I don't know you, to the stranger that I'm having a conversation with, but I can assure you that in fact, I have the testing to prove that I'm a type 1, and we have to live in a world where we allow for the evolution of medicines and treatments to take place without punishing the patient. And when you tell me that, I must have been misdiagnosed, or you don't know what you're talking about, you're a type 2, I just look at them and say, you can believe what you want, but let me tell you my experience. I have testing done. I know that I'm a type 1 diabetic, and yet here I sit in front of you today alive without insulin.
Mm-hmm. And a 5.7, in fairness, your A1C didn't go back into the like high 4s or something like that. But are you wearing a CGM still, or do you periodically?
I do. I wear it every day. So I'm somebody that wants to make sure that I'm doing everything I can for my health. And so to me, a CGM is just part of my life that I accept and willingly wear one because it helps me. There are times where sometimes I won't realize that I'm going low, and it will tell me, you're in the low 80s, you're heading towards 70. Now's the time to have something. Because Scott, as you probably know, even though you're not diabetic, sometimes you can, when you're on these medicines, you can totally forget to eat, even sometimes drink. And I tend to try to drink a lot of water, but I have gone from waking up until dinner time without thinking about food. Like it is that removed from my brain that I will just keep working all day long. And even though it's lunchtime and I see people getting up, I'm like, I'll go in 5 minutes, and 5 minutes becomes an hour, and then I'm on to my next meeting. And it literally is as if my brain has said, you must have eaten already, because we're not telling you you're hungry, but I haven't eaten. And so I'll go a whole long time without eating anything. And then of course, as you and probably many of the listeners know, that will drive your blood sugar levels down. And so that my CGM reminds me, I have to eat.
Yeah, it's fascinating, that thing that you describe. I still don't know how to completely convey it to people. It's so significant that it's caused me to like existentially think about food and like wonder, like, how did I spend so much of my life just captured by the idea that like I have to like plan for my next meal, and what am I going to eat now? And I haven't eaten in a couple of hours. I'll have a snack, and I feel hungry, and you're feeding the hunger all the time. And my body was getting like bigger, slowly bigger and bigger. And I was less and less healthy. And yet there's no way, like, you can say have willpower. It's a nice thought, but I didn't not have willpower. I wasn't like gorging myself or anything like that. I ate when I was hungry. I was pretty reasonable about it. I don't eat like a lot of crazy stuff throughout my life. My body was just going the wrong way. And it's almost like the only way I can describe it, and I don't think this is technically sound, but like it feels like I have a GLP deficiency. And now that I have more, my body appears to work the way I think it's supposed to. The one thing that I will tell people, and I have to talk more about this on the podcast, but you have to teach yourself how to eat again. like how to like say to yourself, I know I'm not hungry, but there's an amount of calories today and nutrition today that I need, and I'm going to go take it in. And there's an amount of water that I need. I'm going to go take it in, not because I'm being told by some unseen force, but because I know it's necessary. That's a leap you have to make. And it's not going to be the same for everybody, right? Because everybody's digestion is going to be different. And, especially with diabetes, you could run into people who have gastroparesis. And I don't just mean like slow digestion, but they could have damage to the nerve that handles digestion. And, that would obviously change things. It's not for everybody, but you have to teach yourself how to eat again on it. I'm in the middle of, so my daughter uses it and she's type 1, and her use is how much her insulin's gone down. It's not going to stop it like it did for you, but a significant decrease. I think 16,000 fewer units of insulin this year because of the GLP.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, going back to that, training your brain that you need to eat, the way that I think about it is I used to eat because I loved food. And now I have to eat because my body's an engine and it needs fuel.
Yeah.
And so that switch to fun to fuel helps me eat. However, it will sometimes take me 2.5 hours to eat a small turkey sandwich for lunch because it just won't go down easily. My brain is saying you're not hungry, but my brain is also telling me, hey, Jim, you need to eat. You need these calories. You need this protein. This is the thing to do.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit like that yin and yang in your brain saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And your rational self saying, yeah, I know I need to eat something. I know I need this fuel, but it's sometimes hard to get all in what you need in a reasonable time.
Yeah, you don't stop at the gas station for fun. You stop because you need gas. So
exactly right.
No, it's something else. So like I asked you about the CGM for recent. Do you see a spike at a meal?
I do. So I'll give you an example. I mentioned Friday night, we went out to a Mexican restaurant. I had mole poblano, a chicken with mole sauce, rice, cabbage, and black beans. And so I estimated that meal probably had, based on my portion size, somewhere between 60 and 70 carbs, because there was a lot of stuff in that meal. And about an hour after the meal, my blood glucose was up around 180, and it stayed there for about 30 minutes. And then it came back down to about 115 within the next, I would say, 90 minutes or so. And so I was back at my baseline. I tend to be between 100 and 105 to 115 that's sort of my norm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was back in my norm baseline sort of range within, 2 hours or so of eating the meal. Like it's amazing.
I can't imagine that if you had that CGM on your wife, it would have looked much different if she ate the same thing.
I totally agree. And that's actually part of what my endocrinologist has said, which is look at these charts. Like when you mark that you're eating something and you're estimating your carbs, yes, you're getting that spike, but you're coming back down as if your body was functioning like a quote unquote traditional pancreas normal person.
And if you don't eat Mexican, if you have a more normal, that turkey sandwich, do you see any kind of rise at all?
It's much smaller. So maybe I'll go to 130, 140, something like that. If you ever said to me that in my lifetime, I was going to go from taking 4 shots a day to no shots a day or 1 shot a week, and my A1C is going to be lower, I'm going to feel better, and you're going to look better, I would have said, Scott, nice to meet you, but go sell it to somebody else because I'm not buying.
Oh, no, for sure. It would have sounded like I was like, Jim, do you know what happens if you take cinnamon and put it on your food? It's going to make your blood sugar better. Like, no, it would have sounded like crazy. And this is where we are right now. June 10th, 2024. We don't really know what this medication is going to do yet. Like right now out in the world, right, you're seeing it starts off as a type 2 medication. And by the way, it's been out for years longer than people think. Like just because the first time you saw that Mindy Kaling was thin, you heard the word Ozempic doesn't mean that's when it started happening. Like there's before this been Rybelsus and other stuff, there were daily shots of GLPs for diabetes, back in the day, Sasenza, stuff like that. It's been out for a long time, right? They've made some new molecules with the Ozempic and the Mounjaro. They're working better, but there's more coming. And right, so now they go, okay, type 2s it worked for in the studies. They see weight loss. They make a weight loss drug. You said, you use Mounjaro. I use Zepbound. They're both drugs that Lilly make. They're the exact same molecule. They're just, one was run through the FDA for type 2 diabetes. One was run through the FDA for weight loss. They have to give them different names. Now what we need is studies for people with type 1. And we need it fast and we need it well, because your experience is insane. Like, there's part of me, Jim, that thinks that the government should come and get you and take you to a lab, and you shouldn't even be able to say you don't want to go. Because we need to know why this is helping you. Like, why is this doing this for you? Why is my daughter going to use 16,000 fewer units of insulin this year? She's had type 1 diabetes since she was 2. She's 20. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's happening?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It is absolutely unbelievable. And for people that are listening to the podcast, go to the Facebook group and look at some of the comments from some of the people who reacted to my post. And, there's dozens and dozens of people who were telling me, A, I was misdiagnosed, or B, that it's impossible, I must be doing something else. Or one person even said that, I'm like a charlatan selling a witch potion, people on the street. What I want to say, and if there's one message that anybody sort of takes away, is we're at the tip of an iceberg of understanding something new and different. So we can't let our belief system from the past impact our belief system for the future. And we need to accept that there are new medicines that open up new possibilities and seem to do different things in our body than we knew were always possible. And so I sit here, as a type 1. 5 years ago, if you said to a type 1, there's something coming out in a few years, or something that's going to become more available in the next few years that's going to take you off insulin, they would have laughed at you and said, oh, that poor guy, he's a nutcase, because that's never going to happen.
Jim, it's possible that 5 years ago, you would have said that if I said it to you.
Oh, 100%.
I think your point is just so worth shining a light on. We don't know what this is, and we're still finding out. Like, I'm not saying if everyone goes out, gets Mounjaro, and starts taking it, your type 1 diabetes isn't going to need insulin anymore. I'm not saying that. I don't think that's true. I don't think that would happen for everybody. But you're the second person that I've interviewed that this has happened for.
So I will tell you, Scott, that I know somebody who is a type 1 diabetic who it didn't work for. Mm-hmm. And so he's all upset, right? Like, why is Jim getting all of these wonderful benefits and I'm not? And so you're right. We do need to do more research. We need to understand what is it that makes it work in patient A, but not in patient B, so that we can try to understand, is it about, when you were diagnosed? Is it about how far along you are in a honeymoon period? Is it something else that maybe I carry that helps the Mounjaro do its job better or in a different way than it may for somebody else?
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done to try to understand this. The other thing that I would say is that Oprah did a special a couple of months ago on weight loss. It's available now. This is not it's not a sponsorship plug, but I'll tell you, it is available on Hulu if you want to watch it, because I recommend it to a lot of people. She also talks about how, weight loss is very similar to the way we looked at alcoholism a few decades ago, which is, we thought, well, why can't you just put down the bottle and stop? Well, we realize it's a disease that your body has, and there are things that we can do to help you mitigate the condition. And weight loss is exactly the same, right? There's sort of 3 buckets of people. There's some people who diet and exercise work really well for. There's some people that only diet works really well for. And then there's this third bucket of people like myself who diet and exercise didn't work for me. And in fact, that's one of the frustrating things in my life, is that for many years, I tried diet and exercise and it wouldn't work for me. And so I felt like I must be doing something wrong. And what is it that Jim has to do to apply more effort or more time or more commitment to make this happen? And now I realize it wasn't about my mindset or my energy that I put into it or my desire, but instead it was something genetically sort of misprogrammed in my DNA that wasn't allowing that to happen. And now this new medicine is helping to fix whatever was broken in a way that is allowing me to live a more traditional, non-diabetic lifestyle.
Yeah. You see people, famous people who are like, just work hard, you'll look like me. I'm like, well, A, you have $9 billion and your day isn't like mine is. You don't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and have to take a shower and take out the dog and then drive an hour to work and then, work 9 hours and then drive home. And you know what I mean? Like your life's not the same. Let's not pretend that it is. Also, I've heard you in an interview say you use testosterone, which, by the way, if that's working for you, I think that's great. But I don't have access to that. And and your body just happens to work with this process, like this process that you choose of working out hard and taking your supplements and doing all the things that you do, like it worked for you. Jim's point's right. You could take a different person and make them do those things, and it still wouldn't work out for them the same way. Like everyone's body doesn't work exactly the same way. There's got to be different pathways for different people.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And not everybody is the same. What works for you may not work for me. And I also tell people, don't believe everything you see. I tend to be a little bit of a disbeliever when it comes to some things. And when that person on TV, that celebrity, is saying, oh, if you just diet and exercise, you can look like me. Well, I don't have a private chef. I don't have a gym in my house. I don't have a trainer that comes to my house. Oh, and by the way, I'm not having secret plastic surgery on the side that I'm not talking about.
And when
publicly.
My kid cries at night, I get up with him.
Exactly.
And all the other things that are happening that they don't tell you about, like 100 million percent. Like, and moreover, I don't get, Jim, if I got preachy for 5 seconds, I understand like some of the responses you saw to your post. Like I really do. And at the same time, I don't understand them at all. Like, why wouldn't you look at this guy who's like, hey, here's my story, and go, oh my God, tell me everything you did, write it down. Please send it to me. I want to go try to mimic this and see if this will work for me. But my big question for you is, your insurance started to cover this, I'd imagine, because it was back before they realized they could screw people with type 1 over and say no to it. But is it still covering it, or are you paying cash?
No, so it still is covering it. I fortunately have not run into my insurance coverage being an issue yet. Now,
maybe your grandfather.
I have no idea.
Like
I truly don't know exactly how it works, but maybe because it's a renewing prescription, they figure, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. I can't speak to the back end part of it. What I can tell you is that every time I go and pick up my prescription and it costs me, let's say $20 for a month or $30 for a month, I'm thankful that it's continuing to work. And I appreciate it very much that I live in a world where I have insurance and I have access to medicine. And for me, it's life-saving. Yeah.
My wife is the one who carries our insurance for our family, and she switched jobs recently. And I would say that one of the main forms of stress that came to us for this like process of when she was applying and looking like she was going to get the job, and is she going to take the job, and all that stuff is happening in there. Most of the stress was about their healthcare versus the one we had. And when my Zepbound got moved over to the new insurance and it went through, I felt like angels were singing, and I was like, oh, thank God, because I actually found myself thinking, I can't pay $25,000 a year for this, but I have to, don't I? Like, how am I going to do that? Like, am I going to have to rob a bank? Like, am I like seriously, like I started having that feeling like, Jim, if somebody just came to you one day and was like, hey, there's another $25,000 bill this year, I would have been like, I don't know how to accomplish that. But I actually found myself thinking, but I would have to. Like, I don't know how to, I don't want to be 50 pounds heavier again.
Yeah, I think your experience is very normal. And I would only validate that I feel the same way. Like, I really feel like, every calendar year, as the calendar moves from December to January and my company's insurance rolls to the next year, I pray and hope that I don't have an issue. But you're 100% right. It's not an insignificant amount of money by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, for people like me who, you could argue it has changed my entire life, how I look at food, how much energy I have, when I can do what I want to do. I don't know how I would live without it. And so, it's a scary proposition. But, I figured some way, shape, or form, I'm going to have to figure this out.
Well, listen, my situation aside, you're going to get insulin-dependent type 1 diabetes back without it. Like, that's bonkers. Like, you can't not. Yeah. Have you ever missed an injection on the weekly?
Yes, I have. I missed one shot, on purpose. It wasn't a forget.
Right.
It was purposeful. Yeah. So my son's in a band, and my wife and I try to follow them when we can on tour. And so we knew that the travel schedule was going to just be a little bit crazy over a weekend. And so I decided to not take the medicine. And then when we got back, I decided I wanted to go for a week without it, just to see sort of how quickly the feelings would come back, both the emotional and the physical, and the need for insulin. And what I can tell you is after 1 week, I didn't see any change. And I wasn't willing to try for 2 weeks. There was no reason for me to sort of push it. but skipping one dose for 1 week seemed to have zero effect on me.
You didn't need insulin?
I did not.
God damn, Jim. Again, I'm sending the government to your house. You have to, I'm sorry, Jim. I know you love your wife and everything, but you're not allowed to have a real life anymore. We have to study you. I'm sending the aliens to get you, Jim. That's all. But I mean,
it is amazing, Scott. Your reaction is not unique. Like people who I tell the story to are like, it's hard to believe it's real. It's hard to believe that what you're telling me based on everything I know about diabetes is true. And I'm like, look, here's my refrigerator. I've got a whole drawer still filled with insulin. And every month I have to check to make sure that if I need it and it hasn't expired, but I don't need it. It's just amazing.
Has a doctor approached you about a study yet?
Not really, no. I was asked, my endocrinologist asked to make sure that I signed up for the type 1 registry and do the surveys that come out through them. So I do that. But otherwise, no, I haven't been asked or approached to do anything unique or different.
Well, somebody should figure out what the hell's special about you so we can duplicate it.
Well, I'll tell you what I tell to anybody that's willing to listen, which is I'm happy to have any conversation. And if I can play some small role helping others deal with their diabetes, I'm happy to do it. That's the whole reason I said I'd be happy to talk to you today, because maybe my experience will make someone else's life a little bit easier. And I personally would find that very fulfilling.
In the short term, I feel badly for all the people who are going to try this and not have the same experience. I don't think it's a dialed in experience, obviously, yet clinically. I have a friend who started it for weight loss, and I'd get the texts, when am I not going to be hungry? You know what I mean? Like, and it was weeks into a month, like, this isn't working for me. I've lost 3 pounds. I'm still hungry and sucks. And I want what you got, like that kind of thing. And we're having this like real conversation back and forth. Then one day she just sends a text and she's like, oh, that's it. I can't eat. And I'm like, okay. She goes, I stopped thinking about food. It just magically happened for her like 2.5 months into it. But then she started seeing different issues, which was, it was slowing down the absorption of some of her pill form medications. And her doctor didn't know how to she then lost maybe 14 or 15 pounds. She was like on her way. And then her doctor kind of panicked and said, I don't know how to fix this absorption problem for your medication. So you have to go off the GLP.
You're 100% right. It's so new, and not a lot of doctors have a lot of training on it. They all focus on the weight loss part of it. But, I'm lucky enough that my endocrinologist was willing to put me on it early and see how it worked. And, the stars aligned, and I wouldn't change anything for it.
Yeah. A lot has to go right for it to work out for you. You have to have a smart doctor who's on the kind of the bleeding edge of all this. You got to get lucky with insurance. You have to, but I mean, hopefully, I just did an interview Friday that hasn't come out yet, talking about hopefully some of these biosimilar companies that are going to make GLPs, and maybe they can become more plentiful and cheaper and stuff like that for people. Maybe get more insurance. But what we really need is for people to do clinical testing on type 1s.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I would also say that if you try it and it doesn't work, it's upsetting. Fully, I understand how upsetting it could be, but it doesn't mean that there isn't another innovation coming around the corner. And so I think particularly as diabetics, we really have to be thinking about tomorrow as much as we think about today, and recognize the reality of today and hope for something new tomorrow. Because whether it's Mounjaro helping a larger swath of type 1 diabetics, or it's some new XYZ medicine, there's so much research going on right now, and there's so many people trying desperately to help us type 1s and type 2s live the longest, most healthy, normal, traditional life that we can, that I have to believe that whether it's a GLP, GLP-1, or something else, that hopefully there's going to be something that's going to work for you, the person who it's not working for today. And hopefully that will come sooner rather than later.
Yeah. You also have to take whatever you can get out of it. Like for my daughter, for example, she made it up to 5 milligrams, but it was too much. So she lost, her weight got too low. And so we're moving her back to 2.5. Hopefully that will continue to impact her insulin use the same way. It's like a science experiment. You're just trying to figure out what it is, because her insulin usage was way down, fantastic. But then, she was away at school, and we didn't have as much contact with her, or I would have been talking to her more about look, you got to teach yourself how to eat. But she was just eating like once a day or something like that because it just, she was during finals and she's like, Dad, it's just, like, I'm just not hungry. And I'm like, I know, but you need to eat something. And we kept like, giving her stuff and she would eat, like, don't get me wrong. She was eating, but she wasn't eating consistently enough. But then the other side of it, Jim, is like, while she's beating through finals and these all-nighters that were going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, her blood sugars were incredibly stable and she wasn't experiencing any lows and her spikes weren't bad. And so it was allowing her not to think about type 1 diabetes management, put more effort into college. And so there's kind of now she's home for summer, of course, and we're going to change the dose and try to get it back in. I'm hearing about people online. I haven't heard one doctor yet say this is okay, but there are people online who are starting to microdose it to just try to make a dent into their insulin needs without the other stuff because they can't handle the side effects of some of the bigger doses. And I just don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah, it feels like we're just at the very tip of the iceberg at understanding what it can do and how it does it. And I'm sure as that learning happens, they'll make tweaks to it. And I made this joke, but it's true. Like you could almost envision a lineup of, are you taking it for weight loss? Are you taking it for type 2? Or are you taking it for type 1? And each one being slightly different to hit the right receptors that our body needs in a way that makes it very meaningful and results focused.
Yeah. And you and I, because we don't have any real idea what we'd be talking about, aren't talking about what you're seeing for women with PCOS and GLPs, which is starting to look like it might be significant. Inflammation in general. I've seen some people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome talk about their joint pain going away on GLPs. Now, maybe that's because they lost weight, but maybe it's also because of inflammation loss. Maybe your beta cells are working better because of reduced inflammation.
Anything is possible, right? Yeah. We just don't know. I've also seen on some of the Mounjaro Facebook groups I've read, some people who say that they've had drug and alcohol problems, that this has helped them break that need and that obsession with whatever their need was. Their
gambling as well.
I mean, there's just, it seems like there's sort of seemingly there's no end to the possibilities of this medicine. I'm sure there are, of course, but for today, it seems to be doing magical things for people in magical ways.
And we don't seem to know what they are exactly yet. So this is a time of discovery. And I hope that, listen, I've been talking about it more frequently, A, because I'm using it, B, because I saw what it did for my daughter, but then because I had the mom of a 15-year-old type 1 come on who is almost completely done with insulin, went from 70 units a day. I think she's down to 4 units of basal now. And that's insane. And she has the same kind of graphs as you're talking about.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a game changer. It's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't possibly agree more. Well, Jim, I appreciate you doing this with me. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that I should have, or anything you wanted to say that we didn't get to?
I would only say that I encourage everybody to have an endocrinologist that they really trust and love. Because to me, when that relationship right now is one of the most important relationships in my entire life. And so my endocrinologist is, core to my well-being, and somebody I look to for all kinds of support and ask health questions to. And so if you're unhappy with your provider, find somebody that's helpful and that you feel like is going to be able to give you what you need. So if you're a traditionalist and you want someone who's more old school, that's great. If you're looking for somebody who's maybe thinking about more cutting edge technology, that's great. Some people focus on the medicine. Whatever it is that you think is going to be the right sort of match for you is what you should go and do, because there are so many possible scenarios by which you may be able to get help, but you can't do it alone. And you certainly can't do it by doing your own research. You really need to partner with a professional.
Yeah, especially with the landscape of the insurance right now, the way it sits right now around GLP specifically, insurance and just getting a doctor to consider a medication that's not labeled for your need right now. I mean, you're looking for special people. You really are. I'm glad and lucky to have found a doctor like that for my family. And it sounds like you have a similar situation, because there are plenty of people who are going to go to their endos after this and say, hey, listen, I just heard a guy's story, blah, blah, blah. This guy, Jim, going to tell them the whole thing. And the doctor's going to go, it's not for type 1s. And that's going to be the end of it. They won't talk to you about it anymore. But you think that that's because it's a rule and they can't, but it's because they don't have the the balls or the imagination or the knowledge or that kind of a thing. So anyway,
exactly.
yeah.
Or they don't have the bandwidth to really learn for the medical professional, right? Because our medical professionals are now so taxed with seeing patient after patient after patient that they don't even have the professional learning opportunity to say, wait a minute, what happens if I do put a type 1 on this? And it's not, that's writing sort of off script. I forget what they call that, but
off label. Yeah. And you're right. They might not even know. Like they might think you're wrong. Like when you say, oh, you misunderstood Jim's story. Or he probably
exactly.
had, they could genuinely not be turning you down because they're like, no, I'm not doing that. They could be thinking like, that's not right. But, I don't know. I'm in here all day seeing patients. I'm not out there listening to podcasts and reading, NIH articles and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're busy being clinicians.
There's one other thought that I'll just share with you, which is someone told me when I was first diagnosed that I had to find an endocrinologist who was a type 1 diabetic because they're the only ones who really understand the struggle. And I've had 2 endocrinologists in the last 8 years. Neither one of them are type 1, and they're both incredibly passionate and understand my condition and what it's like. And so to me, whether your endocrinologist does or doesn't have type 1 diabetes is inconsequential to the care that you can get. What's most important is you find somebody that you trust who's an expert in the area that you want to be in.
You can get a good endo that doesn't have type 1. Listen, it's just like everything else. There's good ones and there's bad ones. And some of the good ones have type 1, and then you kind of go, oh, it's because they have type 1, they understand. But that's not a prerequisite. I've met a lot of endos that don't have type 1. They're astonishingly good at helping people with it.
Exactly.
I've also, Jim, heard stories that'll, curl your toes about people who don't understand it at all and are still, directing people about how to take care of type 1 diabetes. So but it's no different than anything else in the world. It's just,
Exactly.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and congratulations on what's happened to you. It's just wonderful. I didn't ask you, but let me ask you here at the very end, like, what was it like to functionally not have to use insulin anymore?
To describe it as emotionally freeing is an intense understatement. I used to carry a backpack around with me, a little backpack that I would always have sugar pills in and my insulin in, and, sort of prepared for the crisis at any moment. And I don't carry that bag anymore. Like, that is mind blowing to me that I am able to just seemingly live a traditional, quote unquote, normal lifestyle as a type 1 diabetic and eat what I want to eat. And my birthday's coming up in 2 weeks. And I used to love to go to the beach on my birthday and have a salty bag of pretzels and a full sugar Coke. And I haven't had it for many years. But this birthday, I was actually thinking, it might be time to do a little celebration and recognize what I've been able to accomplish and go and have that full Coke and those pretzels on the beach and celebrate my birthday.
That's excellent. Of course, Jim, it's going to be 4 pretzels and 3 sips of the Coke before you go, ooh, it's enough.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I can barely finish anything anymore. So you're 100% on the spot.
I was driving home from the grocery store the other day, and I had bought a bag of hard pretzels, and I was hungry. I'm hungry right now, but I don't want people to think I don't get hungry. But I was hungry on the way home, and I opened up that bag of hard pretzels, and I might have eaten they weren't that big. They were maybe 2 or 3 inches across. And I got to the third one, and I was like, oof. I was like, that's enough. I got to stop.
Yeah.
I feel full. And I think it's completely possible that prior to a GLP, I could have eaten half of that bag of those pretzels.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. What used to take me an entire slice of cake to satisfy a craving now is a bite or 2.
Yeah, I have this pint of mango sorbet in my refrigerator that I now eat a half a teaspoon at a time, or a teaspoon at a time, whereas I would have prior opened it up and been like, oh my God, this is good, and had to stop myself from eating half of it. And I get the same satisfaction out of it, which is really lovely.
And I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I'm missing anything. It's not, I miss cooking, but otherwise the benefits for this just far outweigh any of those kinds of negative side effects that you may suffer with. It's just so worth it.
I can freely agree with that 100%. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I'm sure people are going to I've had people come at me online and say things like, oh, you're pushing the GLP agenda. I actually had somebody say that to me. And I'm like, listen, I'm just sharing with you what's happening to me. I'm not I don't have a GLP sponsorship. Although I want to say something right now, Eli Lilly, I would happily I would happily be a Zepbound sponsor. But I don't think they need the marketing. It's something that the word is spreading out on its own. But I was interested because that person's perspective to me seemed like, this is not a real answer. This isn't how it should be done. Whatever their political line of thinking is around weight loss or whatever, that, maybe I should be dieting and running or something like that. Or, and they don't know I already tried all those things. That's fine. The anger there about like, you're cheating and don't tell other people that cheating works. Like, I was like, oh, wow, is that how you think about this? I just think about people being healthier and less encumbered, and what a joy that is for them.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So, okay.
Exactly. Well, Scott, before we close, I think that it's important for me just to say thank you to you. I've even in the few episodes of your podcast that I've listened to, I feel like I've learned a lot. You are a voice for those who need education and are interested in learning more and hearing these stories and sharing. And so on behalf of, all the type 1s that I know, and I'm sure thousands and thousands of others, thank you for doing such a great job and keep up the good work.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I will indeed. I have nothing else I could do, Jim. I will end up being a cashier literally at Target if I don't do this. So I don't know what else I'm qualified for except to make a podcast about diabetes and talk to people about their lives. It's been a real pleasure helping everyone so far, and I sincerely look forward to continuing to do it. And I'm trying to morph along with where things are going. And that is why I'm covering more GLP stories, because I've tried to take a thoughtful step back and look at it. And this really looks like it's going to be a large part of how people with type 1, type 2 diabetes are going to manage their lives. So I'm just trying to make sure that people understand it, because as it unfolds in all the ways it's going to unfold clinically, insurance, all those different ways, I want people to be ready for it when it's their time, not have it drop in their lap and do the like, why are you pushing this GLP agenda on me? And then miss out on what my daughter's experiencing, what I'm experiencing, what you're experiencing, etc. So anyway, I appreciate it. Yeah, don't worry. I'm not stopping, but thank you so much.
Keep up the great work. And I hope maybe this conversation helped some people understand that you can be a type 1 and not be on insulin in the new world that we live in.
I appreciate your story. I really do, Jim. Thank you. Hold on 1 second for me. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I listened back and I realized you might not be able to hear the cricket, so you might actually think I'm crazy, but I swear, hey, listen. It's here, I promise you. Listen, if you're in the private Facebook group, there's going to be a post about this episode, and Jim said he'd check in and answer questions. So if you have questions for Jim, go ask him. If you'd like to wear the same insulin pump that Arden does, all you have to do is go to omnipod.com/juicebox. That's it. Head over now and get started today, and you'll be wearing the same tubeless insulin pump that Arden has been wearing since she was 4 years old. I'd like to thank AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and remind you that with your first order, you're going to get a free welcome kit, 5 free travel packs, and a year's supply of vitamin D. That's at ag1.com/juicebox. And if you like rubbing comfortable, high-quality things on your body, CozyEarth.com. Go there, fill up your cart with towels and sheets and everything they have. And then save 30% using the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com. I know that Facebook has a bad reputation, but please give the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast a healthy once-over. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. The group now has 47,000 members in it. It gets 150 new members a day. It is completely free, and at the very least, you can watch other people talk about diabetes. And everybody is welcome. Type 1, type 2, gestational, loved ones, everyone is welcome. Go up into the featured tab of the private Facebook group, and there you'll see lists upon lists of all of the management series that are available to you for free in the Juicebox Podcast. Becoming a member of that group, I really think it will help you. It will at least give you community. You'll be able to kind of lurk around, see what people are talking about, pick up some tips and tricks. Maybe you can ask a question or offer some help. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.